One of the hardest decisions to make is a decision where you're sitting at the peak of what you're doing, but you just haven't been able to jump over that line. And you sit down and you think to yourself, is it a case of me needing to continue doing what I'm doing and add on to it? Or is it a case of me having to change everything in order to go to the next level? And what's interesting is that we are seeing that play out in the PSL, in the Betway Premiership, where we're seeing two teams that seemingly faced the same hill, the same battle. Both of them approached it differently. You have a Pirates team that for all intents and purposes had everything. They were winning the trophies left, right, and center, but they couldn't get past the league. And it wasn't because they weren't the most talented. It wasn't because they weren't the most dangerous team. But there was something that was holding them back. You have a Mamelodi Sundowns that has spoken about conquering Africa. And even though they did it once in 2016, they just couldn't get over the bar. But what's interesting is what these two teams did. So let's start with the teams. Orlando Pirates. I've often said, the most dangerous team in the league is a team where a score can go from 0-0 to 5-0 like this. It's a team where everybody seems to understand each other, play with each other, know where they're going. But for some reason, on a random Tuesday, it's raining, you're playing the last team in the league. They just couldn't get over the line. You have a Mamelodi Sundowns that is long being revered in Africa. A Mamelodi Sundowns that teams come and play half ground, low block, where they come against Sundowns. It's the team that a lot of the teams around Africa point to and say that is the best football we've ever seen or played against. The Chameleon, Coach Pitso, all of those things that they've done, the AFL win. But when it came to the big chip, the one that mattered most, they just couldn't get over the line. And what's interesting about both of these teams is that I don't believe it was that much that needed to be done in order for them to take the next level. The problem with the Pirates was always just a mentality thing. Orlando Pirates is a big game team. If the game means something, they show up for it. What's interesting about them is that it works in the cups where all of the games are important. All of the games have, that thing that makes you want to get up in the morning and go play. It's a trophy. That's why they were winning them. But when it comes to the league, game 17, in the grand scheme of things, might mean nothing. Game 17 is a random game where you are 3 or 4 points behind Mamelodi Sundowns and it just doesn't have that thing. And by the time the league has that thing, last 5 games, last 10 games, you're too far gone at that point. Pirates had, I used to call them emotional, and say that the emotions of Pirates was holding them back, because it's not that they were getting beaten by teams that were better than them. When Cape Town Spurs beat them for, I believe, Cape Town Spurs' first win that season, it wasn't because they played better than Pirates. It was just because Pirates didn't show up. And when you come to Pirates, you see a team that is stubbornly stuck to what they know. You know a Pirates player. You know exactly who's going to fit in. You know exactly who you could call. You can look into the league, and they've got so many archetypes that are Pirates born, that through generations of Pirates, you know exactly who plays here, what type of player, what type of player, what type of player. Right? They've got such a deep culture. And you look at them and you go, what Pirates did was to take what they've done and add on top. So bring in more players. Bring in more game changers, actually. Because for me, the difference with the Pirates from last year and the Pirates from this year is that it almost feels like there's an internal team, the guys who all used to get caught into the trap. So on the days when Pirates wasn't performing, Relay was off, Tito was off, all of the guys were off. And then times when they were all, it's almost like Bamuva as a group and as a team, for sure. But what they've done is they've brought in some outliers. I don't think Apolis is necessarily motivated by the rest of the Pirates players in that way. I think he's a player that comes in and wants to do what he wants to do. You look at Sipombule, it doesn't seem like he's a player that the standards or what Pirates normally does applies to him. He's got the freedom and the protection now to be his own player. And what's nice with Coach Wadu and what he's doing is that because he's playing all of those things so well, where Pirates would have a time where someone would stand do that. You've got Mbule who sits down and can also change it. You've got an Evidence who can play a certain way. You've got so many little game changers that they've all come together now, and they can take what they do in cups, that final stretch, that last 20 minutes where you get that goal and go through. Now they can do that more consistently throughout the league because of how stacked game changers, not even just players, the game changers are in that squad. So it might be a little change that was made in order to make Pirates what it is right now. Sundowns, on the other hand, I've had the conversation about Sundowns where I said, Sundowns was at a crossroads. And Sundowns was at a crossroads where it was. Do we continue doing what we were doing? Shushan in piano, chameleon, internal family, Rulani is there, he comes from Triga Pitso, you continue extending that tree forward. Or do you go, that thing has only taken us so far, now we need to sell out. And now we need to sell out to the other side and say, okay, you're going to bring in somebody that's done this before from the north. You're going to play a lot of north football. You're going to bring in players that don't necessarily play the shushan and piano or come from that culture. You're going to bring coaches that don't have that same thing. You're going to have a technical director. Give him the power to make decisions. And even though we might be breaking what Sundowns was, this is an opportunity to build a Sundowns that could be. Now, both approaches have risks. You look at Orlando Pirates, the risk is that if you're doing the very same thing, even if you put a new paint job on a car, you add a spoiler. You add rims. It might not mean that that car is going to then perform later. And luckily for Pirates, their changes were not spoilers and rims. Their changes seemed to address what was happening within the engine. They continued on with that thing, Oguchi. You bring in a coach who's got a developmental focus. You bring in a coach who's a plumber for a little bit while he's building. Take the pressure off. And they build themselves into somebody that they trust. I remember fighting for Wadu in episodes where I was like, guys, Wadu's a good coach. He's just dealing with a transition period. He's dealing with this new Pirates. Whereas Jose Rivero had the luxury, I guess, not the luxury, but he had the ability to bring in the youngsters, to cut in the gaps, to get into the gaps. Coach Wadu came into a Pirates team that now has stars on top. And finding that balance of how to rotate them, how to play them, was going to be something that was bound to be a problem. Then on Sundowns' side, their risk was very simple. You know, you're tearing down everything you know. There's a kitchen that you know where the bowls are, where the glasses are, you know where the domestos stays, you know where everything is. And now, not only are you remodeling, you're demolishing that thing to put up something new, which could be completely different. And even on their side, there is an adjustment period. And I think one of the reasons why Sundowns might not be as successful is something I'd said previously, that if you're going to sell out, you have to sell out completely. If you're going to sell out, you have to uproot every single root, every single tree, every single plant, every single shrub of what Mamelodi Sundowns was, and go full into what was happening. And I think personally, what's holding Sundowns back was that last season they had incredible glue. They had an incredible glue man in the name of Lucas Ribeiro Costa. Lucas Ribeiro Costa papered over the facts that the previous season Coach Mangoba wasn't given time. They got rid of him. A lot of the players were not given time to adjust. Ukar also wasn't given a transfer window. They had to go to the Club World Cup. They came back and didn't make too many changes. And because of that, Lucas held them together through the system, through his performances. But then when he left, now Sundowns had to deal with the real part of the transition. You know, the toughest part of the transition is the hard decisions that you have to make. And part of the hard decisions is the players. Because what's interesting is that while Sundowns changed everything in the background and everybody back then, I think two things they're grappling with is, number one, I think the players have a power in the club. They understand that they've been now there, a couple of them, through 3 coaches. They understand that when things are happening, the call from the fans is, where are these guys? So when Coach Mangoba came in, and I think he exiled some of the guys, he learned very quickly that there is a power dynamic there, which sort of makes decisions on your behalf. Because if you start losing, or you have to go through that transition, or you want to change the football, you still have to keep those guys in, and maybe they're not the guys that can do what you need to do. You see it with Coach Caroso, where the guys he's brought in, Nuno Santos's, he brought in Kimang Resinho, he brought in the centre back last season. It seems as though he has a way that he wants to play the football. But what might be hamstringing that process is some of the older guys, and it's not because they're bad players, but maybe they just don't play the football that he wants to play. And again, you have to sell out fully if you're going to sell out. You cannot have lieutenants of the previous regime still within the club at the time. So you have to think deeply about a Mokwena, about a Modau, possibly about a Williams, possibly about some of the other players, Bobo Mkhulise, where you say, I am now willing and I trust myself enough to get rid of these guys. One thing about Coach Rulani is that he came in and he said, I am now willing to put Onyango on the bench. I am willing to remove a Charlie. I am willing to remove a Hlompo Kekana. I am willing to change the fabric of what the team is in order for them to play my football and listen to me. So that is one of the most interesting parts about what's happening with Sundowns. Whereas with Pirates, one of my worries was that Uprastena Gaseko. For all intents and purposes, it's a new leadership that's running Pirates. But that new leadership, Abo Mpumi Khoza, chairman Mpumi Khoza, I think it's chairman, or I don't know what his designation is, but I think it's chairman, are following the blueprints of old, and they're objectively adding on top of what was working. It's very similar to taking a Shushan piano into the future, building on top of that. And I guess what's nice about them is that Pirates is not a team that holds on too long to people. If you're still a faithful servant of the club and you still do what you need to do, which again is also easier because Pirates plays in a way that accommodates the guys. If you're in the Pirates team, you are most probably the guy that fits into that position. So even if you look at a Dion Hotto, for example, who's been with Pirates for a while, because he's still playing, he's there, and because he's still there, he fits what the mold is. But because Pirates is not hamstrung by the rotation of players, I've spoken before about how Pirates is not shy with moving players on, how they're not shy with relegating people to the bench, how they're not shy with finding something new and letting it shine. You know, your Mbogazis, your Mbogazis, your Siemas, your Ndas, your Sesanes are always used the defense, your Tlokis, your CBCs, they don't mind changing all of that. So I don't think they deal with the same player power struggles. And when they have dealt with the player power struggle, Lodge, they don't mind moving him on. As popular as he is, as influential as he was, the moment that Lodge's business outside, the performance inside. You remember when Lodge was coming in, the players used to shake and get smaller and they wouldn't know what to do, and he was the guy, right? They moved him on. So Pirates is not going to deal with that on their side when they're iterating. But I think all they've done was to add proper quality. So when you say it's an upgrade, it's an upgrade. But the mentality switch has been the most important thing. Now, obviously, they sit with the Champions League issue. But if they can now, 2 trophies in, they can win the league, this would be one of the most historic seasons. And depending on how long they're going to take this project, they could be sitting in the same place with Mamelodi Sundowns in the next couple of years, where they have to figure out how do you take that success and move forward. What I love about Coach Wadu's project is that he's come in and now they've taken the next step, or it seems like it. They've taken the next step. These Tuesday games are not a problem. These random fixtures are not a problem. They're winning them. And if they can win the league, that will be the step that people like me have been asking from Pirates for a very long time, to say, you guys are dangerous, you're amazing, you've got everything. Put it on yourselves to want to take that step. And I think what Pirates is showing is that. So very, very interesting to see the two approaches and the possible consequences of the two approaches and how it's playing out now. What I'm looking for from Pirates is to continue. You know, there's rumors that De Jong is coming in. I think De Jong is an incredible, not replacement, but an incredible player that fits the Mahopa role, the Mahopaldinho, Mahopadowski, the guy I fight for all the time, but he fits that mold, right? I think they're moving away a little bit from that thing where you want Mabasa. That's why Mabasa's not playing. Or Butuma, his days, I don't think he's going to be that good at Pirates, or that he's not going to have the longevity at Pirates. But they're looking at it and going, okay, Mahopa does very well because he's willing. He scores. Those who said he doesn't score, he scores. But he's also willing to play the ball off. And I'm on record, on video, saying that I think De Jong is the most underrated number 10 in the league. And he'd probably play that 10 role so well in a team like Pirates, to be able to facilitate those guys, like a 9-ish 10, to be able to facilitate the guys around him to go score. Watch Aborile score tons of goals when that man joins, right? But it's, again, they know what they are. They know what they're looking for. It's just about leveling up each time when you make those moves. So very, very interesting. I want you guys to please let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking about what I just spoke about. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And guys, I apologize for being away. I just had to deal with a family issue, if I can put it like that. I just had to deal with that, but I am back. Apologies for missing the matches. Apologies for missing the reviews, guys. It was a very stringent matter that I was dealing with. But guys, thank you so much for your support, and thank you guys for being with me throughout the year. I know we've had our differences, but what I always say is that I'm not here to be right. I'm here for us to have conversations that we don't see outside. I'm here to have conversations where we can think about our clubs a little bit deeper. Some of the things I say might not be comfortable, but if we can start thinking about those things, our football can be put into a brighter light. It doesn't come from a hate. I think what's interesting is that the conversations we're having, they don't come from a hate perspective. I'll give you an example. When we speak about Mbogazi, and I spoke about his move, and I spoke about how he fell into opportunities. It wasn't that he's not talented or wasn't the best or wasn't he didn't need those opportunities, or he wouldn't get those opportunities. What I'm saying is you need to plan it out a little bit better. So we wouldn't have a Puso Ditejane if certain things didn't happen, if the ball boy incident at Chiefs didn't happen. The question is, why is that the thing that's giving us Puso, and not pathways that are created to make a Puso? When I speak about Mfukeng, it's not Mfukeng, I hate Mfukeng, it's Mfukeng is the best that we have. And how we handle the best that we have goes down to the guys who are midway, in the middle, close to him, behind him, wherever. We're a similar circumstance. Are we doing everything in our power to make sure that Mfukeng is a world beater? Or are we sitting down, clapping hands for him, and ignoring that there is some growth that needs to happen? and putting pressure on our clubs, on our officials. Same goes for Abu Shabalala. Same goes for Obrigado. Obrigado is a talent that was doing incredible things at under 20. Now he's in an unstructured Chiefs, where he's being thrown left and right and center. Are we doing justice to the talent and not allowing the talent to be what builds itself, but create the scaffolding, the structure, to make sure that even if we are Lahlumfukeng, there's things that stop him from falling, that are not up to him. A lot of the players overseas, and even in the conversations we're having now, those things come with scaffolding and cover. So these are the conversations that I want to have, that this channel is about, and I hope you guys will support. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, everyone.